Hello artists, and welcome back. Lovely to see you here. Today we're going to be taking the beauty that we see outside onto our page. So we'll be discussing how you can paint flowers with watercolour. We will follow a step-by-step process to break down what you need to do. Using these simple steps will allow you to paint simple yet effective floral artworks and designs. As we go through each step, you will see me demonstrate it before I have finished discussing it. However, if you watch through till the end, it should all make complete sense. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you give this video a big like by pressing the thumbs up button, and please subscribe with the notification bell on for more videos to come. This really supports my channel and it helps others have the opportunity to view this content as well. So let's get started. So for step 1, set up your paints in your working space using a clean flat surface. Draw a light design onto your paper. Here I have used an H pencil where it is so light that you probably can't see it very well on the screen. I've used this onto Fabriano bright white paper, which is 300 GSM. The watercolour paints I'm using today are Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolour tubes. I've put a link to these in the description box below, and I've selected just 3 colours for the flowers plus the green stem. So I've got cadmium red, dioxazine purple and Australian grey, and the Australian grey is a colour by Art Spectrum. I also have here cadmium yellow and sap green for the stem, as well as Chinese white and ivory black to mix the shades and the tints. For step 2, draw your floral design onto your paper using a light pencil no darker than HB. This is so you don't see the pencil through your artwork once it's finished. Step 3, select and mix your colours. Using watercolours is different than using acrylic and oil paints, so in my personal experience, using this medium I found that less is better. Therefore, using only a few colours in the entire composition is more effective aesthetically than using and mixing many different colours. It is much more simple and easier on the eye, and you have the water to give you shading or tone throughout your painting. For each flower, select a dominant or base colour that you're going to use for the petals. In this example here, I intend to use violet for the flower on the left and flamingo pink for the right. In order to get these colours, I am mixing my dioxazine purple with the Australian grey. This colour appears similar to a pinkish skin tone with a little grey added in as well. To get some shadow areas around some of the petals, I will add a small amount of black to this colour that I've mixed. I'm also mixing a rose colour here by adding some Australian grey to the cadmium red. In shadows and some of the petal outlines, I will also add a small amount of the dioxazine purple to get the darker tone. This will be my secondary colour that I will input into the petals of both the flowers. A small side note, I've included a link below if you'd like to know the details or where to purchase the colour Australian grey. If you don't have it or can't purchase it where you live, you can mix this up yourself by mixing a pink based skin tone with a small amount of grey or black and white separately. Step 4 is painting the petals with your dominant colour. So begin painting by outlining the edges of each petal of the full flowers drawn on your page with the violet paint that you have mixed. Also paint any shadows or vein lines that you see. Use a wet on dry technique to get sharp edges for the petals and flower buds by applying the wet paint to the dry paper. Use a round brush like I'm using here, and ensure that you aren't using a brush that is too big or too small. This will depend on the size of each petal and your ability to get those sharp edges and outlines without filling up the rest of the petal. For this artwork, I am alternating between a size 5 for the larger petals and a size 0 for the smaller or tiny ones. Do all of this working with small areas at a time so the paint doesn't dry before you get to blending it. Use a clean brush and grab a small amount of water with the brush. Use that water to carefully drag the paint pigment from your outlines down towards the center of the flower. Move the paint around so it sits how you would like the gradient to appear. Step 5 is to add in your secondary color. Here we have mixed the rose color. Use your round brush to draw a small vein line from the center down towards the tip. You don't need to drag it all the way to the end. Use your brush now to gently blend the edges of your line into the violent gradient you have created until you are satisfied with the blend. Now step 6 is optional, and this is where you'll create a water texture within your petals. This technique is something that you might like to use, and it's when you blend your paint within each petal, you use a wet on wet technique for a random distribution of the colour gradient. This gives an interesting and unique effect for each petal. Just be aware when it dries, you will get what's called water blooms. This technique is often avoided by artists, however I think that it looks quite beautiful. If you aren't already aware, water blooms are marks or splotches where the paint and water have unevenly distributed, and these are even known to be called cauliflowers. For step 7, use a darker colour to emphasise the shadows and outlines. To do this, mix a small amount of black together with your dominant colour. Paint over the outline or areas of shadows that you began with. Only select a few petals in your flower to apply this to, and ensure you don't paint around the whole of the outline, just small sections of it is fine. The colour needs to be quite close to your dominant colour so it blends in with the rest of the petal quite easily, but still emphasises its shape or shadow if that's what you're painting in, as well as drawing your eye to it. Continue these steps for the rest of your flowers, and keep watching to see this process. Step 8. Paint the second flower. Use the same techniques that we've just discussed to paint your second flower. This time you'll need to mix up the flamingo pink using cadmium red, white and a little of the Australian grey. You will notice I haven't used a secondary colour for these flowers, but instead painted the centre with the cadmium red. For the outline and shaded areas, instead of using black to mix in with the flamingo pink, I have also used the violet from the other flower. Transferring colours from other parts of the painting helps to create a relationship and connection between each element in your artwork and brings them together as a whole once it's finished. Now you need to paint the stem. Mix sap green with a small amount of cadmium yellow. This will be the dominant colour. Use the exact same technique that you have for the petals to paint the stems of your flowers. Because you are covering a larger area at once, you will notice you will need more water to create the gradual gradient of the paint. Secondly, paint in your shadows and darker areas. Do this by mixing a little black to the green mix. Again, I have also added some dioxazine purple. As you did for some of the petals, outline the edges and veins of the leaves using water to drag the paint away. You may want to do this a couple of times, depending on how dark you want the shaded areas to appear. You may notice I have intentionally painted the top left-hand side of the flowers, using more of the rose colour with less shadows and darker outlines. This is because my light source is hitting this area. Therefore, quite a lot of my green foliage has been shaded, particularly as you get nearer to the stem and the outer edges of the leaves, as they sit on the right side. Next, paint in the small amount of greenery with your flowers. Step 10, the final step. Lastly, sign your brilliant work of art. Well done to you all, and thank you for watching this entire process and following along if you did. I hope you enjoyed this step-by-step process and understood this one way that you can paint flowers with watercolours. Please remember to like this video and press the subscribe button. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care and goodbye.